Hello everyone and welcome to an orientation session on PSIR. So what is the purpose of this orientation class? Of course, we'll be addressing certain questions. First up, we'll address the importance of an optional subject. And then we'll also look into why should anybody focus on an optional subject and what is so special about PSIR. Why is it that most toppers end up taking this subject? And also I'll give you a brief structure on how the questions are asked in optional paper in general, because the pattern of exam for an optional paper is vastly different from that of your GS papers. And then a brief on the syllabus and the course structure. And also I'll put in my expectation from you before you join this course. Okay, so let's begin. First up, of course, importance of an optional subject. Now, why is an optional subject so important? Why does it matter? See, as far as an optional subject is concerned, if you look into it, you will realize that the selection of an aspirant largely depends on how well you are able to score in your optional paper. Of course, there are other factors as well. You have your GS papers, you have your essay paper, ethics paper, primarily GS paper 4. Yes, but if you go through it, the GS papers at least 1, 2 and 3. Here, the scoring for toppers is in general in the same range. The differentiating factor can be possibly a paper like GS paper 4. Yes, definitely. And of course, essay. But with the kind of questions being asked in GS paper 4 and essay, it becomes slightly difficult to actually predict whether you'll be able to perform well or not. So ultimately, it all boils down to the optional paper, right? And that is why we see over the course of so many years, optional paper is what decides the rank of an aspirant. In fact, not just rank, the selection also depends on a good score in the optional paper, right? So any score of over 300 would be an amazing score to have, and that is what we should target. Okay, so as I said, this is the reason why an optional subject is important. Also think of it, if you look at the GS papers, the preparation keeps on continuing, and in a lot of these GS papers, you also have to look into the changing aspect of questions being asked, etc. But for optional paper, largely once you've prepared for it, you are ready for 500 marks worth questions in the exam. And with basic revision, things are great. That's also there. That's also one reason why having a very strong command over your optional subject matters. And then comes the very big question, and that question is, how do you choose an optional subject? I mean, why should we say choose PSIR or maybe any other optional subject? See, there are certain factors. Factor number one in choosing an optional would of course be interest, right? Do I have a genuine sense of interest in that optional subject or not? Let's say somebody hates maths, and just because maybe last year's topper or some topper was with maths optional, does not give me enough reasons to choose or opt for maths optional, right? Similarly, somebody weak in economics, or say somebody who does not know, mugging up facts is not their forte, for them that might not be a great say optional, choosing economics or history or whatever. So of course, interest is important, wherein I should have that keen interest in studying the subject in detail, because here we are not going to brush through the subject, right? It is not about getting acquainted at the +2 level only. No, no, no. It is about getting yourself acquainted with the syllabus and the subject, at least at the graduate level and maybe above the graduate level. So somewhere between graduate and the postgraduate level, that requires immense interest in the subject and sustained interest. So yes, of course, interest is something that is paramount. But beyond that, we also need to have the requisite skill set. As I said earlier, if somebody, let's say, does not have answer writing skills, then it's very difficult to take an option like, say, PSIR, sociology, PubAd, etc., the most popular ones. If somebody has no understanding of, say, technicalities, or has no interest, or does not have a scientific bent of mind, then of course there could be a concern with respect to choosing what? Choosing, say, economics, choosing geography, or any other science-based subject. If somebody does not like to mug up, facts, etc., history could be a challenge for them. So yes, we also need to understand our skill set, and that is why the least skill set, or maybe a very generalized skill set required for an optional is present in those popular options like, say, PSIR, sociology, PubAd, Anthro, etc. They don't really need very specific skill set, frankly. Beyond that, other things like the availability of material. We should prefer choosing an optional where the material is easily available in the market. Please don't go and choose a very unique kind of optional where you won't find material in the market. So that becomes a problem, because then your struggle starts for collecting resources. And we don't want you to waste time in finding out the right resource. That's also there. So availability of materials, faculty, coaching institutes, etc. So that's again important. And see, beyond that, there could be other factors like one very common factor that people use is GS overlap. That if I cover this optional, to what extent will I be able to, have a GS overlap? To what extent will I be deriving some benefit in GS paper? So that's a very logical question to ask. But and yes, there is a difference. Some optionals are heavily geared towards favoring GS papers, and once you read that optional, you might have a strong command over that particular subject, and which would result in you also having a strong command in your GS paper, right? So, of course, in this regard, we have no doubt there is one clear winner, that is PSIR, because under PSIR, once you clear PSIR, of course, you'd have to have a command over polity, you'd have to have a command over governance, then social justice to a certain extent, social issues to a certain extent, some generic information on history also is required. Then you'd get to know about the ideologies being used, etc., which can reflect in your social issues, social justice, which can also reflect in essay paper. Then you would read about some of the philosophers, thinkers, etc., which can again reflect in what? The ethics paper, GS paper 4. And let's not forget the second paper, PS is political science, IR is international relations. So under the IR paper, you'd have comparative politics, and of course clear-cut IR. So IR theories, etc., which means your GS paper 2, the IR part is covered completely and comprehensively. The quality of answers that you would write, of course, a non-PSIR aspirant will be no match to those quality of answers. The same goes for even polity and other things, right? So yes, as far as overlap is concerned, without doubt, PSIR has the biggest overlap with GS. Yes, we do have some other very popular options like, say, sociology and PubAd, which do have a very good overlap. Say, philosophy has a great overlap with some portions in essay and also GS paper 4, etc. PubAd has good overlap with respect to paper 2 primarily, and of course paper 4. Then we have sociology with an overlap in social issues, social justice, some contribution to paper 4, essay, etc. So yes, that's also there. Though again, I would not say that this should be the primary concern or the main reason for choosing an optional, because we see people scoring great marks by choosing an option like, say, a medical field optional, a maths optional, some science-based optional, and it's just that I would want to mentally segregate myself and my preparation, that when I'm preparing for optional, it's just optional and then back to GS. So here in these kind of optionals, the beauty is the overlap. But in those optionals also, it's a fair game. I would not say a fair game, but no problem as such, right? So that's what is the point here. So based on various kind of factors, you can choose an optional, and as I already said, the syllabus, or not the syllabus, but the pattern of optional is slightly different from what you see in general, or especially the questions being asked. So let's have a brief idea on what is the pattern of this optional paper in general. So in your GS papers, just to give you a basic idea, in your GS paper, you will have 20 questions. 10 questions are 10 markers. 10 questions are 15 markers. The 10 marker ones need to be addressed in 150 words, 15 markers in 250 words. We know this standard, right? No problem. But if you come to your optional papers, two papers, paper 1 and paper 2, depending on which optional you choose. So I'll explain to you how the structure works in paper 1 or one of the optional papers. So your paper will be divided into two sections, section A and section B, two sections. Now, in each of these sections, you will have 4 questions, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's the numbering. So let me write here 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we have 8 questions. Now every question that you see here is worth 50 marks. Now it says, sir, then it makes no sense. If every question is worth 50 marks, then we have 8 questions. 8 into 50 is 400. The paper is only 250 marks. So therein lies the fun element. As we say that devil lies in the details. So here, question 1 and question 5, that means the first question from each section is mandatory. And that's not one question. Here, you will have 5 questions, A, B, C, D, E, and here also A, B, C, D, E. This particular question, which has 5 sub-questions, are 5 different questions, not just one related question. This primarily covers the entire syllabus, roughly, briefly. Now, this is mandatory. This means you have to attempt these 5, you have to attempt these 5. Okay, this means 50 plus 50. So let's keep a track of it. 50 done, 50 done, 100 done. Now, every section has now 3 remaining questions. You have to choose one from each section. Okay, so one from here and one from here. This means 50 and 50 more. So we have 50 plus 50 more. Now this makes it 200. And we have to also choose one more question from any of the sections. So I can choose one from here and 2 from here, or one from here, 2 from here. But choosing one from each section is mandatory, apart from 1 and 5. Please don't count 1 and 5 because they have to be addressed. Now in these questions, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, you will have 3 questions, A, B, C. So under this, it's all 10 marks, 10 marks, 10 marks, 10 marks. Here, 20, 20, 10. A, B, C. 20, 20, 10. We have also seen cases where UPSC has asked 20, 15, 15, etc. But 20, 20, 10. 50, 50, 50, 50, 50, 50 everywhere. So finally, one from each, and that again requires skill, because you need to understand which questions to choose, because if you choose a question that you are not sure of, or the answer of which you could not attempt nicely, that's a huge setback of 50 marks, right? So in your optional paper, you don't have to address all 8 questions. You have to only address, of course, 5, and you will have a choice to leave out 3 questions. It's your choice completely whether you leave out 2 from here or 2 from here. You can leave out 2 from each section. Why? Because 1 is mandatory from each section. Okay, so this is how the pattern is for our optional paper. Okay, slightly different. If you have any doubts or queries, let me know. Slightly different from what you usually see or understand in your GS paper, and that makes it very, very important. As I said again, let me remind you, choosing the right question. That's it as far as the pattern is concerned. Now, let's come to the syllabus of PSIR. So again, as I said, I'll just briefly recap on the importance of PSIR, or why should you choose PSIR. But before that, I'll have to also address briefly the syllabus as to what to expect when you study PSIR, right? First up, we have to study about political theories. Political theory, the meaning and approaches to political theory, Marxist approach or liberal approach, whatever, right? It talks about things like what is power, who has power, okay, various views on power, what kind of view did Marxists have on power, what kind of view did Macpherson have on power, etc. Quite interesting, quite relatable to your daily life. Okay, and knowing and studying political science gives you an edge, an advantage in general as well, because then you are able to understand behavior, political behavior especially, and you're able to understand various ideologies and what drives them, what motivates them. And that means you can also very easily grasp the newspaper, news items, because you understand the deep down motivation behind any action, right? So, political theory, then theories of state. This means, again, of course, starting with excuse me, starting with what is state, how to define a state, and then what are the various theories of state. And then these big terms, justice, you'll understand the concept of justice. Rawls' theory of justice, very, very important as a topic, right? We've had questions from it multiple times in UPSC. Then equality, rights, democracy, the concept of power, as I explained. Then political ideologies. What are the various kinds of ideologies, like say feminism, liberalism, Marxism, socialism, communism, all such things. And then, of course, the Indian political thought and the Western political thought. So, Indian thinkers, Western thinkers, right? So, this is all part of your syllabus under section A, paper 1. Okay. So, you see, a lot of these ideas that you gather from here, we'll do the importance of PSIR simultaneously. So, a lot of these ideas you gather from here can very easily be used to substantiate or put in value in your answer, say in GS paper 4, in essay, and let's not forget even in GS paper 2, social justice part, polity part in general, and also GS paper 1, right? In fact, some of it can also be used to address some economy based questions in paper 3. So you see how the overlap is very, very wide. Okay. And then comes the next section. So if you remember, we had talked about how we have 2 optional papers and each paper has 2 sections, section A, section B. So this was the syllabus of section A, and now we have section B. And section B, the syllabus is something that you must have seen in your history and polity preparation. So Indian nationalism is the first aspect that you need to know about, right? Making of the Indian Constitution, okay. So all those, the Government of India Acts, etc., the Councils Act, all these things. Then the salient features of the Indian Constitution, the principal organs of the government, union and state governments, grassroots democracy, which means, the local self-governance, important here as well, just like in your polity. Then statutory institutions, commissions, NCW, NHRC, we have seen questions from these time and again, which are also a part of your GS paper 2. Then federalism, center-state relations, then a bit of planning and economic development, then caste, religion, ethnicity in Indian politics, something that will interest you a lot. Okay, then the party system that we have, the social movement. So you see, all these things are things that you already know about, and once you delve into them deeper and have a better understanding of these things, backed with proper base, a sound foundation, ultimately, I mean, it's of course something you can imagine how easy it would be to address questions in GS paper 2, or for that matter some parts of GS paper 1, right? That is why this optional is very, very popular among students. That's actually one reason, because of the immense overlap that you see for GS, and that shows in the syllabus, and that shows in the type of questions that are also asked in the exam, very clearly visible. Now let's move on to the second paper, that is paper 2. So that was paper 1, now paper 2. So under paper 2, we discuss things like, again, section A, section B, right? So this is section A and this is section B. So section B is all about India's foreign policy. So section A talks about comparative politics, state in a comparative perspective, politics of representation and participation, globalization as a topic, and approaches to studying international relations. It serves as the backbone to understanding international relations and dynamics. So when you study this as a topic, you can very easily understand what goes on around you as well, right? So I would say this helps you in life in general. Reading the newspaper becomes easy. Then the changing international political order. Okay, we know how the order has been changing consistently with now the rise of even India on the scene. Multipolar world is what we say. Then evolution of the international economic system, UN, regionalization of world politics, and contemporary global concerns that plague the world. This is a more general approach towards IR, meaning we need to know about what is happening in the world, special events, etc. And also these international bodies like say UN, right? And then some basic theories. Once you have a command over the basic aspect, then the paper expects you to also shed some light on Indian foreign policy. So, of course, Indian foreign policy, India's contribution to NAM, non-aligned or non-alignment movement. So we were non-aligned, right, despite fighting wars with our neighbors. And then India and South Asia, India and the global South, India and the global centers of power meaning USA, Russia, etc. India and the UN system, India and the nuclear question, the deterrence factor, no first use policy, all such things. So you see, this paper is nothing but the IR of your GS paper 2. So when you prepare for PSIR, your GS paper 2 is actually covered completely. Beyond that, you have benefits in Indian society and social issues in paper 1, paper 4, and also essay paper. That's beyond the paper 2 completely. Okay. And then, of course, recent developments in Indian foreign policy. So yes, this is one part of the paper which would require you to be slightly more updated with information, right? So that's an advantage, or that could be a challenge, or maybe an advantage. It depends how you look at it. So maybe because an aspirant needs to consistently go through news, so I don't see that as a big concern. We don't have to be crazy for current affairs, but yes, any contemporary event that goes on, you need to be aware of that. I think that's the only concern that some aspirants might have who feel that, no, sir, I want an optional where I once mug up things, I'm done for life. Then maybe this optionals, this part will not be a great idea. Otherwise, the rest of it is all static. We don't have any change in the theories of state. But yes, this part definitely, there are some aspects which are quite current oriented. But again, relatively very small. What you make it out to be, not really that much, very small. Okay, and it focuses more on the contemporary aspect. And once you understand the base, it's very easy to arrive at the reasoning behind what is happening right now. Why is a large section of India so much in support of Palestine, or why is large section of India so much against or in support of Israel? Why does it always happen that when we would send our envoys to Israel, they would always come back only after going through Palestine, etc. Various aspects, right? So if something in news comes up right now and you know the base, you don't need to worry too much about it because you have an in-depth understanding, right? So that could be something that initially bothers people, that, oh, how would I catch up with all these things? Not really. That is not going to be a bit of a even a bit of a concern, right? And yes, as an informed aspirant, it's only fair that you follow current affairs properly, right? So in respect to every such factor, be it theories, be it relationship to any option, any GS paper, this optional, that's the reason this optional becomes very popular. We have seen toppers over the years constantly taking this optional. And when I say toppers, I'm referring to top ranks, not top 100, but top 20, top 10, top 5, top 3, top rank ones. That has been the case, right? So yes, this is all about the syllabus. And as I said, I've already explained to you why PSIR. First things first, this is interesting, definitely. But then I can't speak for you. Of course, I'm a teacher of PSIR. I chose this because I found it interesting. But a lot of students do find it interesting. That is actually true. Number two, as we have said, and I think that's the reason why you are even thinking about this optional, is GS overlap. And yes, though I would prefer this not to be the reason, the first one should be the reason, right? But let's be real, we are here for an exam, right? If I had interest in general, I could simply go and read. No, you are here for a purpose. So yes, GS overlap is something that matters, and I fully respect this idea also, and it is very important, right? Beyond that, the course, the content of it is readily and easily available. Nothing which you might not find anywhere. In fact, even the paper is on a simpler side. We don't find it as difficult and complicated as a public administration paper, which requires a lot of application, right? So PubAd is a very dynamic paper actually. Of course, people who score well in PubAd, kudos to them. And I would say it requires a lot of application of mind. Here, if you know things, the base is clear, it is going to be very easy to score. I mean, scoring 270, 80 marks here is a standard situation, right? It's only when you want to score above 300 that you have to push in and take the effort, extra mile, that makes you a topper. Otherwise, scoring here is not a big deal because concepts are clear, questions are repetitive, the same kind of comparisons, etc. are asked constantly. That's it. So, as I said, paper is also relatively on the simpler side, relatively, compared to other options. And we are yet to see any kind of scaling, harsh marking, etc. A deliberate attempt by the UPSC to ensure that people don't choose PSIR only because at least till the recent report of UPSC, PSIR was the most popular optional amongst all aspirants who are appearing for the main exam also, right? So that's there. See, one important aspect that you have to understand for PSIR is that a lot of these committees and commissions, they keep on giving recommendations on how UPSC's exam is not very career focused. You're asking questions from different topics and you expect the aspirant to write answers on those topics and then sit for the exam, clear the exam, and then take a job role which has no relationship to the knowledge he's acquired. For example, let's say somebody has cleared the exam with an amazing performance in Telugu literature, for example, and then he ends up being an IPS officer in Jammu and Kashmir. That has got no relationship to the preparation strategy and focus and knowledge he has acquired. Maybe he is now an IFS officer, foreign services. That again has no relationship to the selection pattern or criteria. So a lot of committees and commissions have been recommending that we should at least have a more career focused or job oriented exam, right? One such committee was the parliamentary committee, the DRSC. If you know, we have these parliamentary committees called departmentally related standing committees. Normally, you can also find them as mentioned as DSCs, right? Departmental standing committees. The actual correct name is departmentally related standing committees. We have 24 such committees, right? Now, one such committee on external affairs was chaired by Shashi Tharoor, the famous English speaker Shashi Tharoor. So in 2017, the DRSC on external affairs gave its recommendation that we have to revamp the foreign services. And it has also suggested that all those people who want to be eligible for foreign services, they should be asked to sit for extra papers. Extra papers would be on things like international relations, right, political science and world history, etc. Those things can be decided later on, but the idea was that they should be asked to sit for extra papers so that we can find those candidates who have an acumen towards handling the job role of an Indian foreign service officer. So even there, if any such magical change happens, though it is very unlikely, just to clarify, still you will always be on the winning side by taking PSIR as an optional. So let's call it an additional kind of advantage that you might experience if things go haywire. And any day if let's say tomorrow optionals go away and are removed, still this optional gives you a lot of knowledge that will reflect in your GS paper any day, right? So as I say, if you read an answer written by a PSIR student on GS paper 2, it's a non-PSIR aspirant's answer is no match to the answer written by a PSIR student. That is actually true. And once you read an answer, you get to realize, oh, this fellow definitely has that edge, right? And that goes for any option. Maybe somebody who has history optional, of course, the facets that they might put in a history answer in paper 1, a non-history aspirant will not be able to, right? So that's there. Anyway, so this is all about the importance of PSIR. Now the course structure. So we will roughly take around 350 hours. So the course structure is around 350 plus hours, of course. No, plus minus, no, not minus, but 20-30 hours, of course, can be there depending upon how many doubts are asked in the class, etc., and how many breaks do we have, various such factors, right? So I also want to tell you very clearly, this option does not need 7, 8, 9, 10 months. I'm not sure why we see a situation like this. It does not need 10 months to study this optional. Maybe if you are like say studying 1 hour per day in some coaching, definitely. But we follow a standard pattern. Maybe in the first week of our classes, we might have a 2.5 hours of class to build on that momentum. But then we switch on to 3 hours of classes every day, minimizing leaves Monday to Saturday. So that is our structure, 3 hours of classes, and then of course we follow with answer writing practice on a regular basis. We prefer, I'll explain the PYQs asked, what was the expectation, etc. That's up to me to provide you with inputs. But again, as I said, it can anyone can take a horse to the pond, but you can't make it drink, right? So it's up to you to be studying and revising and mugging up and writing answers, etc. Right? You are too old for me to make a phone call to your parents and all, like that can't be done. So yes, as I said, the course structure, we'll start with political theory and we'll discuss those concepts. So around 50 hours will be spent in those areas. Then we'll have political ideologies that requires around 20 hours. Then we have Western political thought, requires 50 hours. Indian political thought requires 50 hours roughly. Indian government and politics, since we know a lot about polity and governance, etc., 50 hours are sufficient to fill up those gaps, give you additional information, in-depth information building onto the foundation you already have with your basic knowledge of polity and governance. Then around 30 odd hours on comparative politics will be used up. Then we'll discuss on the theories of IR, etc. So around 50 hours for that. Then India and the world, India's foreign policy and all that would take around 50 hours. And of course, things like legitimacy, hegemony, power, etc., which we would have discussed earlier also. So a lot of repetitions will take place in this particular situation, and ultimately we would end up in a case where 20 hours more can be added to that, right? So to summarize all this, around 350, 370 hours is what is required, what is needed. Okay. Now, what is my expectation from you? So when it comes to my expectation from you, firstly, is that I would say if you want to join the course, at least read 3 NCERT books and come. Now, even if you don't, I mean, no harm, no foul, I'll be covering anyway, but that helps you. So one such book is an NCERT book called Political Theory. This is a class 11th NCERT book. So please read this book cover to cover. This book will help you not just here, but in your GS paper 2, 1, 4 also. Then Politics in India Since Independence, it's a class 12th NCERT book. Please read that also. Politics in India Since Independence. This is a class 12th NCERT book. Okay. And one more thing, Contemporary World Politics. That's one more NCERT book of class 12th. Please read that also. Contemporary World Politics. This is also a class 12th NCERT book. So once you read those NCERT books, then you'll have a strong base, a base over which we'll further add more information, etc. So otherwise also you should read these books. But if you are joining the PSIR course here or anywhere, I would suggest you still please read these and then go to the class. Okay. So that is all for me as far as this is concerned. Normally, people do ask for a book list, etc. But I can give you book list, books like Purchasing Andrew Haywood's Political Theory. That's a book you can purchase. Political Ideologies and Introduction by Andrew Haywood. That's the 7th edition. You can purchase that. You can purchase In Political Thought by O.P. Gauba, right? You can purchase Western Political Thought by O.P. Gauba. We can, of course, purchase these books, but what's the point, right? Rather, we have to build on to a strong base. So anywhere you go to, the faculty will tell you the same thing. Please focus on class notes first and then selectively read from these books. So don't get in the race of purchasing, Andrew Haywood or Bailey's, etc. Not required. Clearly not required at all. Before you attend a class, etc., nothing should be purchased, because ultimately it will end up on your bookshelf. Yes, it might make for a great selfie, but nothing beyond that. That's all that it will do. It will keep lying on the shelf unused, like the brains of most aspirants, right? Anyway, so that is all as far as our discussion is concerned. If you have doubts, queries, concerns, please let me know, or else we should wrap up this session. I hope you had you got some information that you felt was required, and that helps you frame an opinion, maybe possibly helps you decide on, at least if not PSIR, the importance of an optional. And rather, you should not waste too much time and pick one optional and just go with it. PSIR, any other option does not matter. Pick and choose and stay with it for at least a couple of years. Delve deeper, have that knowledge, take the exam. That's it. My idea is to convince you that an optional subject is very important. This or any other does not matter. Take the optional, start at the right time, give it enough time, and if you score well in your optional paper, you are going to definitely get a top 100 or top 50 rank, is what I'm saying, right? Rest assured, things will all fall into place, right? Okay, so that seems all, and that is all for me for today. Let's meet in some other video. Till then, that is all for me. Jai Hind.